The courtroom was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, each second stretching like a rubber band about to snap. Judge Judy Shandlin sat elevated behind her bench, her sharp eyes cutting through the tension like a scalpel through flesh, her expression unreadable but her presence absolutely commanding. The case seemed routine enough at first. A small business dispute, $15,000 on the line. Another day in the endless parade of people trying to game the system. But what happened next would shatter that routine into a million pieces, and expose something so calculated, so devious, that even the most seasoned court observers would be left shaking their heads in disbelief. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Karen Whitmore, a 42-year-old woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and designer sunglasses perched atop her head like a crown, sat in the plaintiff's chair, her manicured nails drumming lightly against the wooden armrest. She'd been answering questions with practiced precision, her voice dripping with rehearsed vulnerability, painting herself as the victim of a ruthless business owner who'd caused her unimaginable suffering. Across from her stood Maria Santos, a 50-year-old immigrant woman who'd poured her life savings into a small catering business, her weathered hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles had gone white, her eyes glistening with the kind of fear that comes from knowing you're one ruling away from losing everything you've built. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her reading glasses sliding down her nose as she examined a document, her voice cool and measured as she asked Karen to clarify a specific detail about the alleged incident. That's when it happened. Karen's breathing suddenly became rapid and shallow, her chest heaving dramatically as if an invisible hand had wrapped around her throat. Her eyes went wide, rolling back slightly, her hand flying to her chest in a theatrical gesture that would have earned applause in a community theater production. She gasped, a strangled sound that echoed through the courtroom. Her body swaying in the chair as Bailiff Byrd instinctively moved forward, his hand reaching out to steady her. The gallery behind her erupted in concerned murmurs, a woman in the third row standing up halfway, her hand covering her mouth. Maria's lawyer turned to look, his briefcase nearly slipping from his grip. Genuine concern flashing across his face because this wasn't in any script he'd prepared for. Karen's breathing grew more erratic, her performance escalating by the second, her other hand now clutching the edge of the table as if gravity itself had turned against her. She made a whimpering sound, her head dropping forward, blonde hair cascading over her face like a curtain closing on the first act of what she clearly thought was an award-winning performance. But Judge Judy didn't move. Not an inch. Her expression didn't shift into concern or alarm or even mild interest. Instead, her eyes narrowed, the kind of look a lioness gives when she's spotted something pretending to be prey but smelling entirely wrong. She set down her pen with deliberate slowness, the click against the wooden bench sharp enough to cut through Karen's labored breathing. The room held its collective breath, waiting for the judge to call for medical assistance, to pause the proceedings, to show even a flicker of the sympathy Karen was so desperately performing for. Judge Judy's voice came out cold, flat and absolutely devastating in its certainty. Stop the act. I've seen real panic attacks, and sweetheart, that's not it. The words landed like a sledgehammer against glass. Karen's eyes snapped open, her breathing stuttering mid-gasp, confusion and shock flooding her face as if she'd just been slapped. The gallery gasped, a collective inhale of disbelief, because judges don't just call out medical emergencies as performances. Not unless they know something. Not unless they're absolutely certain. Byrd stepped back, his hand dropping, his expression shifting from concern to something closer to curiosity. His years of experience telling him to trust the judge's instincts even when they seemed impossibly harsh. Judge Judy reached for her phone, a sleek black device that looked tiny in her hands, and without breaking eye contact with Karen, she pressed a single contact and put it on speaker. The ringing echoed through the courtroom once, twice, three times, each tone ratcheting up the tension, until a voice answered, crisp and professional. Dr. Morrison, speaking. Judge Judy's response was immediate, her tone carrying the weight of absolute authority. Doctor, I need you on video conference right now. I have a woman here claiming to have a panic attack, and I'm calling it as fake as a $3 bill. I need you to confirm what I already know. The courtroom exploded into whispered chaos. Phones coming out of pockets, people leaning forward in their seats, Maria's hands unclenching slightly as hope flickered across her exhausted face. Karen's breathing, which had been so dramatically erratic just moments before, suddenly evened out, her chest rising and falling normally now, her eyes darting between the judge and the phone like a trapped animal, searching for an exit that didn't exist. Within 30 seconds, the large monitor behind Judge Judy flickered to life, and Dr. Richard Morrison appeared. A distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd spent 3 decades in emergency rooms seeing every trick in the book. Judge Judy gestured toward Karen with one hand, her voice carrying a hint of satisfaction that she was barely bothering to hide. "Doctor, meet Karen Whitmore. She just had what she wants me to believe was a panic attack. I want you to watch her, ask her questions, and tell me if I'm wrong. Because if I am, I'll apologize right here and now. But if I'm right, she's about to learn that faking a medical emergency in my courtroom is the worst decision she's ever made." Karen's face drained of color, all the theatrical flush from her supposed attack vanishing like water down a drain, her mouth opening and closing without sound, because whatever plan she'd walked in here with had just encountered a wrecking ball she never saw coming. Dr. Morrison adjusted his glasses, his eyes studying Karen through the screen with the clinical precision of a man who'd diagnosed thousands of patients and could spot a fake from across a digital connection. His voice was gentle but carried an edge of professional skepticism. "Ms. Whitmore, I'm going to ask you some questions about what you just experienced. Can you describe for me the physical sensations you felt during this episode?" Karen stammered, her hands now resting flat on the table, no longer clutching anything dramatically, her breathing completely normal, her eyes wide with the dawning realization that she'd just walked into a trap that was about to snap shut with the force of inevitability. The courtroom leaned in, every person present understanding without being told that they were about to witness something extraordinary, something that would be replayed and shared and talked about for years to come, because Judge Judy hadn't just called out a lie. She'd brought in a medical expert to dissect it in real time, and whatever Karen had been trying to pull was about to be exposed under the harshest light possible. The light of undeniable truth backed by credentials and experience that couldn't be argued away. And the best part, the part that made Judge Judy's slight smile absolutely terrifying, was that this was just the beginning of what she was about to reveal. If you want to see how this courtroom drama unfolds and what the doctor exposes that's even worse than just faking a panic attack, smash that like button and subscribe, because this case gets absolutely wild, and the evidence Judge Judy drops will blow your mind. Let's dive in. This wasn't just another frivolous lawsuit clogging up the court system. This was the fourth time Karen Whitmore had dragged someone into litigation. The fourth small business owner she'd targeted with claims that ranged from slip and fall injuries to emotional distress. Each case settled quietly out of court, because fighting back cost more than just paying her off. She'd perfected a formula over 3 years, finding vulnerable targets, people without the resources to mount a proper defense, immigrants who feared the legal system, single parents barely keeping their heads above water. Karen didn't just sue people, she hunted them, and her weapon of choice was always the same. A manufactured medical crisis that transformed her from aggressor into victim, in the eyes of anyone who didn't look close enough. Maria Santos represented everything Karen had exploited before, a single mother who'd fled Venezuela 7 years ago, with nothing but a recipe book and dreams that tasted like her grandmother's empanadas. Maria had built Sabre del Hogar from the ground up, working 18-hour days, sleeping on a cot in the kitchen during those first brutal months, slowly earning a reputation for authentic food and genuine warmth that money couldn't buy. Her catering business had finally started to thrive, enough to hire 3 employees, enough to rent a small storefront, enough to let her daughter stay in school instead of working to help pay bills. Then Karen walked into her life like a virus, claiming she'd suffered severe food poisoning at an event Maria catered, demanding $15,000, and when Maria refused to settle, escalating to this courtroom showdown that could end with Maria losing her business license, her reputation, and everything she'd sacrificed to build. But Karen had made 3 critical mistakes. First, she'd underestimated Maria's lawyer, a young public defender named James Chen, who'd taken the case pro bono after hearing Maria's story and discovering something that made his blood run cold. Second, she'd chosen to perform her medical theatrics in front of Judge Judy Sheindlin, a woman whose 35 years on the bench had given her a lie detector more accurate than any polygraph machine. And third, most devastating of all, she'd gotten sloppy. The previous 3 business owners had been too broken, too financially destroyed, too afraid to compare notes or fight back. Maria wasn't. She'd reached out, connected with the others, and together they'd assembled a pattern that looked less like coincidence and more like criminal enterprise. The stakes were nuclear now. If Karen won this case, Maria would be forced to declare bankruptcy, her business shuttered, her employees jobless, her daughter's college fund evaporated. If Karen lost, if Judge Judy could prove what she clearly already suspected, Karen faced perjury charges, potential fraud indictments, and civil suits from every person she'd scammed. The $15,000 on paper was meaningless. This was about justice versus manipulation, truth versus performance, and whether the system could protect people like Maria from predators like Karen. Judge Judy's eyes said she already knew which side would win. Karen's panicked expression said she was just starting to realize the trap had already closed. Dr. Morrison leaned closer to his camera, his expression transforming from polite professionalism into something sharper, more focused, like a surgeon identifying exactly where to make the incision. Ms. Whitmore, during a genuine panic attack, patients experience very specific physiological responses that are involuntary, meaning you can't control them even if you try. Let me ask you this: when you felt your heart racing, did you also experience tingling in your extremities, specifically your fingers and toes? Karen's eyes darted to her lawyer, then back to the screen, her mouth opening as she scrambled for an answer that would sound medically plausible. Yes, I did. My fingers went completely numb. I couldn't feel them at all. Dr. Morrison nodded slowly, but his expression didn't soften. It hardened. Interesting, because you were drumming those same fingers on the table throughout your episode. Quite rhythmically, actually. Genuine panic attack patients lose fine motor control. They can't perform coordinated movements like that. The gallery erupted in murmurs, several people audibly gasping, one man in the back row letting out a low whistle that got cut short by a glare from Bird. Karen's face flushed deep red, her hands now gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles went white. But this time it wasn't performance. It was genuine panic at being caught. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled in front of her face, clearly enjoying watching the trap spring shut piece by piece. Doctor, continue please. I want this thoroughly documented. Dr. Morrison pulled out a tablet, tapping at the screen. I've been watching the courtroom footage from the last 3 minutes. Ms. Whitmore, your breathing pattern was hyperventilation on demand, meaning you were consciously forcing rapid breaths. In a genuine panic attack, breathing becomes irregular and uncontrolled. Patients often describe it as forgetting how to breathe. You never forgot you were performing. Also, your pupils, I can see them clearly on this camera. They're not dilated. There's no perspiration on your forehead despite your claimed physical distress. And most tellingly, the moment Judge Judy questioned you, your symptoms stopped immediately. Genuine panic attacks don't have an off switch. They take minutes to hours to subside even after the trigger is removed. The courtroom felt like it was tilting on its axis. Maria's lawyer was frantically taking notes, a smile breaking across his face for the first time in weeks. Maria herself had tears streaming down her cheeks, but these were different tears. Relief mixed with vindication. The kind that come when you've been screaming the truth and someone finally hears you. Karen tried to restart her performance, her hand moving toward her chest again, her breathing starting to quicken. But Judge Judy's voice cut through like a chainsaw. Don't even think about it. Sit up straight, put your hands on the table, and stop insulting every person who actually suffers from anxiety disorders. You're done performing in my courtroom. James Chen, Maria's lawyer, stood up with a confidence that hadn't been there minutes ago, holding a manila folder that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in the best possible way. Your Honor, if I may, we have additional evidence that directly supports Dr. Morrison's assessment. He approached the bench, sliding the folder across, and Judge Judy opened it with the careful precision of someone unwrapping a gift they'd been waiting for. Inside were printouts, screenshots with timestamps, browser history pulled legally through Discovery, and what they showed made Judge Judy's eyebrows raise in something close to impressed disbelief. Ms. Whitmore, Judge Judy said slowly, reading from the first page, would you like to explain why your search history from the night before this trial includes the phrases, how to fake panic attack in court, panic attack symptoms list, and my personal favorite, Judge Judy weakness? Karen's face went from red to white in an instant, her mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. No sound coming out because there was no explanation that wouldn't bury her deeper. The gallery erupted, not in polite murmurs this time, but in open shock, someone shouting "That's insane" before Bird raised his hand for silence. But Chen wasn't finished. He never broke stride. We also have security footage from the restaurant where Ms. Whitmore claims she suffered severe food poisoning, footage from that very night showing her laughing, dancing, and consuming 3 glasses of wine with no visible distress whatsoever. He produced a USB drive, handing it to the clerk who loaded it onto the courtroom monitors. The video played crystal clear, showing Karen at a birthday party 2 hours after she claimed to be violently ill. Her arm around friends, her smile wide and genuine, looking healthier than she did right now, sitting in that chair with her lies crumbling around her like a house built on sand, finally meeting the tide. Dr. Morrison's voice cut through the chaos, calm but absolutely final. Your Honor, in 30 years of emergency medicine, I've treated thousands of panic attacks, PTSD episodes, and genuine psychological crises. What I just witnessed was textbook malingering, the deliberate fabrication of symptoms for secondary gain, in this case financial and legal advantage. Ms. Whitmore doesn't need medical attention. She needs accountability. Judge Judy nodded slowly, her gaze shifting to Karen with the kind of intensity that could melt steel. Ms. Whitmore, do you have anything to say for yourself? Anything at all that might convince me you didn't just commit perjury in my courtroom? Karen's composure shattered like glass hit with a hammer. She shot up from her chair, her voice rising to a shriek that echoed off the walls. This is garbage. You can't do this to me. I know my rights. You're biased. You're corrupt. All of you are in on this together. Her finger jabbed toward Maria, venom dripping from every word. That illegal immigrant doesn't deserve to win. She probably paid you off. This whole thing is rigged. The mask had fallen completely. The vulnerable victim replaced by something ugly and entitled and seething with rage that she'd been caught. Judge Judy's gavel slammed down once, the crack of it like a gunshot. Sit down and shut your mouth before I have you removed in handcuffs. Karen froze, her chest heaving with genuine anger now, not performance, before slowly sinking back into her chair. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice dropping to something quiet but absolutely lethal. I've made my decision and you're not going to like it. Case dismissed with prejudice, meaning you can never bring this claim again. You will pay Maria Santos $15,000 in damages for the suffering you've caused her. You will pay an additional $25,000 in court costs and emotional distress. And I'm referring you to the district attorney for a full perjury investigation. Because what you did here today wasn't just lying, it was criminal. The video hit the internet before Karen even made it to her car. Someone in the gallery had been live streaming the entire proceeding. And within 2 hours the clip had exploded across every platform, racking up 5 million views by midnight and climbing exponentially from there. The comments section was absolutely merciless. Thousands of people dissecting every moment of Karen's fake panic attack, creating side-by-side comparisons with real medical emergencies, turning her performance into a masterclass on what not to do. By morning, Karen Whitmore was trending globally, her face plastered across news outlets with headlines that ranged from Judge Judy destroys faker to woman's courtroom. Lie backfires spectacularly, but the digital humiliation was just the beginning of Karen's unraveling. The 3 previous business owners she'd forced into settlement saw the video and immediately contacted attorneys, filing motions to reopen their cases based on newly discovered evidence of a pattern of fraud. A restaurant owner in Newark, a dry cleaner in Boston, and a small bakery in Philadelphia, all coming forward with nearly identical stories. The same manufactured crisis, the same threat of lengthy litigation, the same demand for settlement just low enough that fighting seemed more expensive than paying. The district attorney's office announced a formal investigation within 72 hours, and Karen's carefully constructed scam empire began collapsing like a condemned building. Her employer, a mid-sized insurance company that ironically dealt with fraudulent claims, terminated her immediately after the video went viral, citing breach of ethics and reputational damage. Karen attempted damage control with a tearful apology video posted to social media, but it only made things worse because she was clearly reading from a script, her eyes darting off camera, her remorse as fake as everything else about her. The comment section tore her apart, one user writing, "You forgot to fake hyperventilate this time." Another adding, "We can literally see you reading. This is pathetic." Within a week, Karen had deleted every social media account, disconnected her phone, and gone into hiding as process servers tried to locate her for the mounting pile of lawsuits. Meanwhile, Maria's story took a completely different trajectory. A crowdfunding campaign launched by grateful community members raised over $90,000 in 2 weeks. Enough for Maria to open a second location and hire 5 additional employees. If you believe in real justice and want to see more exposés like this, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because we're just getting started. Drop a comment telling me what punishment Karen deserved. Now let's see how this story truly ends. 6 months after the trial, Karen Whitmore stood in front of a judge for her criminal sentencing, pleading guilty to 4 counts of perjury and 2 counts of fraud to avoid a lengthy trial she couldn't afford to fight. The judge, clearly influenced by the viral courtroom footage, sentenced her to 18 months probation, 300 hours of community service, specifically at a mental health crisis center, where she'd be forced to witness real panic attacks and genuine suffering, and mandatory restitution totaling $87,000 to her victims. Her law license was permanently revoked in 3 states, her credit destroyed, her reputation atomized into digital dust that would follow her forever, because the internet never forgets and search engines never forgive. Maria Santos became something more than a survivor. She became a symbol. Her catering business expanded into 2 locations, then 3, employing 17 people and generating enough revenue that she could finally breathe without fear. She started a scholarship fund for immigrant entrepreneurs, using 10% of her profits to help others avoid the nightmares she'd endured. And she began speaking at small business conferences about standing up to predatory litigation. In one interview that went modestly viral, Maria said something that resonated deeply. "I almost gave up and paid her just to make it stop. But my daughter asked me if running away was what I came to America to do, and I realized teaching her to fight for truth was worth more than any amount of money." Judge Judy's handling of the case became required, viewing in law schools as an example of judicial instinct backed by expert verification, and Dr. Morrison's protocols for detecting malingering were adopted by courts in 17 states. Mental health organizations launched campaigns using Karen's case as a teaching moment, explaining how fake claims create stigma that hurts real sufferers, making it harder for genuine patients to be believed and receive care. The broader conversation shifted from mockery of Karen to examination of why people weaponize medical conditions for personal gain, and what structural changes could prevent it. The lesson crystallized into something simple but profound. Shortcuts built on lies eventually become traps built by truth. Karen thought she'd found an easy path to money by exploiting sympathy and fear, but she discovered that systems have guardians, that victims find each other, and that accountability, though sometimes slow, is absolutely inevitable. Judge Judy had said it best during sentencing recommendations. "You came into my courtroom thinking you were smarter than everyone else. You learned you're not, and now you'll spend years paying for that arrogance." Maria rebuilt her life because she stood on truth. Karen lost everything because she built on lies, and that's exactly how justice should work. If this story restored your faith that truth still matters, subscribe to this channel, smash that notification bell, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me the craziest courtroom moment you've ever witnessed. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and remember, in Judge Judy's court and in life, you can run from the truth, but you can't hide from it forever. See you in the next one.